when companies limit their ABM programs to just email, nurture, and programmatic media, they're really limiting, the overall scope of their opportunities because their customer isn't just, checking their email or only browsing a few websites. They're all over the place. So if you're not, reaching out to them in all the places that they hang out, you're going to flat out miss them. And then if you're not being consistent about your message across all the places they hang out, then they're going to get conflicting messages about your brand or what it is you offer. So it's one, making sure you're showing up where you need to, but also making sure that you're really consistent in your messaging as well. Ultimately, we've seen that the best sort of strategy is what we call a layered cake strategy. So it's one that integrates multiple tactics like paid media, social, nurture, publisher programs, intent sources, review sites, and really pulling all those things like audiences, data, and insights, and layering those together and using them across channels, across different tactics, across platforms. So using things like the intent you're seeing in one platform, or what you can tell your audience is looking at in terms of reviews for your company and your competitors. So now you can take those things, you can pull those audiences into a paid media campaign, and you can, as part of that mix, use some of the insights that you're getting from your publisher programs to know what content you need to reach these people with. So that's just one really brief example of how you can stitch together these different pieces and use them ultimately much more effectively. And then when you do things like that, you're also able to find continually evolving and ever-changing sorts of use cases. So things like TAM expansion, your opportunities are changing, week by week. What are those new accounts that you can go after? Churn management campaigns. So, looking at people that are currently using your software, things like that. How can you make sure that you don't lose those clients? And then, of course, the final piece is making sure that all those things are really actionable for your sales team. So, all these insights and things like that are good for campaigns, but they do need to be shared in a way that is digestible and actionable for. When you're creating an omnichannel strategy for an ABM program, there's a few important things to keep in mind. First is that your strategy should always be data and test driven. So, to put that simply, just be prepared to test often and regularly. And, as you think you have arrived at an answer, you'll probably find a new thing that you want to test. But ultimately, that is the hallmark of a successful program. As you learn more about your audiences, their preferences, the channels you have available, and even just as buying teams change, you'll consistently be finding new things you want to tweak and need to tweak in order to keep your programs successful. The next piece is just remembering the buying team. So your buying teams are much more complex and nowadays larger than what you may expect. So really make sure that you're being thoughtful about all the members of the team, the different needs that they may have in terms of research, the different questions that they may have, so on and so forth. Ultimately, there are so many stakeholders involved that you may get to the 1 yard line with a deal, and out of nowhere, to you, there could be someone from a completely different department that is either able to start to guide some of the conversation, or maybe prevent that deal from going through altogether. So make sure you're just aware of all the people you need to appeal to in order to be successful. Next is just that all your tactics need to be part of an integrated strategy. So You need to have cohesive messaging, a clear journey, and you need to unify your data, and be viewing your metrics from a integrated fashion and not just in silos, to make sure that you can really understand the intent of your customers, and from there determine what you need to do within your plan to continue to be successful. The next kind of things are just more general reminders. So one is just that ABM success is definitely going to take a lot of iteration and continual refinement, as I said. But the ultimate end goal is to be able to determine the next best action. So as you can imagine, anytime you're attempting to read the mind of your customer, uh, that's a pretty big task to take on. But using the inputs you have, using the resources available for ABM programs, you can definitely start to, tie into that journey very seamlessly. And from there, really start to develop programs where, based on what you're seeing, you are able to make sure that you're utilizing, the right channels, the right content piece, to be able to get that customer aware of your brand, engaging with your brand, and ultimately get them to convert to your brand.